Alligator Alcatraz is being visited by Trump today at the opening in Florida. It's in the Everglades. It's a kind of quite hastily erected detention center, so tents on an old airfield in Florida. It was set up by Ron DeSantis, the Republican governor of the state, under an emergency order, we should say.
Donald Trump has narrowly won a Senate vote on his one big, beautiful bill, the $3.3 trillion package of tax cuts and restrictions to Medicaid and so on, will now be debated by Congress. It's unclear if it's going to pass before Trump's Independence Day deadline on Friday. This is quite controversial, right, Lara? I mean, Elon Musk says it's going to destroy millions of jobs and cause immense strategic harm. Why doesn't he like it?
Yes, so there are a number of reasons why he doesn't like it. Chief among them, at least publicly, the fact really, given that we know this from congressional forecasts, is that it is likely to add a lot of money to the national debt. So the Congressional Budget Office reckons as much as 3.3 trillion over a decade. And actually, the tax cuts are even bigger. So the overall size of the Senate tax cut is now roughly $4.5 trillion. That's higher than it was in the House version of the bill that they passed previously. And Musk is saying a lot of these politicians for the Republican Party were elected partly on a promise to bring down the national debt, or at least be a bit more mindful of it. This expands it a great deal. And one of the ways in which they've offset that 4.5 trillion to bring it slightly down is very controversial cuts to things like Medicaid and food assistance programs. So that's one of the reasons why you've got holdouts from different sections of the party. You've got some who are saying, actually, I'm furious about the impact on the national debt, as Musk is. You've got others who are more moderate. So people like Susan Collins of Maine and Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, who are saying, a number of things, but also, and really primarily, the cuts to things like Medicaid are going to be very damaging, particularly for those in their states. So it's one of the reasons why you've seen some quite interesting tactics from the Republican leadership to try and bring some of these people back on board. Over the weekend, when the draft text of the Senate bill was published by the Senate, we saw there were some new passages about Alaska in there, which included tax breaks for whaling captains, which clearly was tailored at Lisa Murkowski, it seemed, to get her back on board. But no sign yet whether or not she, or indeed Susan Collins, or the other two who did vote against it at a procedural vote on Saturday, will back the bill. Trump can only afford to lose 3 votes on this, so he's not got a huge amount of room to play with.
Well, from whales to alligators, tell us about Alligator Alcatraz.
Yes, so Alligator Alcatraz is being visited by Trump today at the opening in Florida. It's in the Everglades. It's a kind of quite hastily erected detention center, so tents on an old airfield in Florida. It was set up by Ron DeSantis, the Republican governor of the state, under an emergency order, we should say, which is one of the reasons why there will be leakages do this, and it's part and parcel of the big Republican agenda around deportations, but not just deportations, but also this idea that you can try via a deterrent, i.e. by signaling that conditions are so bleak and that to try and escape you would, and they have threatened this, come across alligators, pythons and crocodiles, that you would consider perhaps self-deporting. And the key win for the agenda really would be if quite a number of people did self-deport, because it would be much cheaper and less complicated for them. And so this is one of the big deterrents, and it's certainly something that a number of people in the MAGA base are quite happy about. Ron DeSantis is actually selling Alligator Alcatraz T-shirts to the base now, so we'll see how that goes today. But Trump very much are going to arrive there and celebrate its launch.
I mean, he's previously said he wants to use the original Alcatraz as the detention centre as well. He does seem to have a real sort of taste for, I don't know, mass detention, right?
Well, I mean, Stephen Miller, who is his border advisor, one of the most important people in the Trump administration, sees this as a very important part of the second term of Trump, this idea that you do need to bring deportations down, immigration down and deportations up. And indeed, they have had some early successes on this. So border crossings are down. It's something that hasn't been covered as much as the president would like, but it's certainly something that they are pouring a lot of their energy in. It was, of course, the reason, or at least the catalyst, for that big flashpoint in LA earlier this month, where ICE raids led to disorder and indeed, the National Guard being sent in by Trump. So this is a fight that on every opportunity he seems he wants to have.
And finally, Lara, Donald Trump has threatened to withhold funding from New York if the city's presumptive Democratic nominee becomes mayor. He's described Zoran Mamdani as a pure communist and wanted me better do the right thing. Tell us, what's the big problem here? Why does he mind him so much?
Well, he loves New York, and he has a very personal connection to New York. He says, I mean, he sat down in his first interview since the strikes on Iran with Fox News over the weekend, or in an interview broadcast over the weekend, in which he was reluctant to say what he was going to do about Zoran Mamdani at this stage, particularly with regard to the Republican candidate that will stand against him and how they might challenge his possible election. But he did say, this is a city that he cares about, that he's got very many friends and connections with. So I think he'll be keeping a very close eye on Mamdani. And Caroline Levitt, who is, of course, the White House press secretary, has been quite open about the fact that this is not a candidate that they are going to be willing to support. And some in the Republican Party think this could be great for us. It's a great fight. They don't think that he's going to have widespread support in the country, but it also could mean that they are getting into a number of different policy spats about particular things that they don't like.
What kind of things that they don't like?
Well, I mean, what did Zoran Mamdani run on? He ran on things like free bus rides, free grocery stores. His main abiding message was one of affordability, of the city becoming unaffordable. But he also had other positions, particularly on questions around Gaza and Palestinian statehood, that you could see some in the Republican fold challenging. And I think that's something, I mean, on those wider social issues as well, you can see how the Republicans could end up in quite a big fight with Mamdani. It would depend, of course, what he chose to focus on. But you will certainly see this, I'm sure, if he is indeed elected.
Thank you very much indeed, Lara Spirit. Lara is, of course, a Washington correspondent of The Times and The Sunday Times, and will be joining me at this time every week.